Good morning, everybody. This is John Hartnett, CEO and founder of SVG Ventures and Thrive. Good morning from wherever you're dialing in from, or good afternoon, and welcome to the Thrive Innovation Series from Silicon Valley. I'm joined here with Neal Gutterson today from CTO of Corteva. I hope everybody is keeping safe, healthy, at home, and surviving this pandemic. I think we've all experienced how important and critical the food supply chain is, where it starts in the agricultural field through a complex supply chain of processing, logistics, and retail to put food on our tables. And now there's no more important time than this supply chain, which puts food on our tables today in a very difficult time for many people, families, and companies. So our focus of this series is really to focus on innovation in the food supply chain and what's happening both in terms of major corporations like Corteva to young, early, emerging technology companies. Our next slide, I'd like to thank our corporate partners who have supported Thrive and also SVG, where we work with those companies to find the best and greatest technologies that are disrupting and improving the innovation supply chain. Next slide. We have put together a great series. Obviously today, looking forward to the discussion with Neal and what's happening with Corteva. Our next speaker will be Secretary of Agriculture, the US Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. I was fortunate to spend time with him in February when we did a fireside chat at the USDA Outlook Forum. And following that in June, we will have Bill Evan, CEO of the Pork Board, and Joe Weber, Executive Vice President of Smithfield. And I think you've probably seen the food supply chain and specifically the challenges around the meat supply chain. And it'd be great to be able to hear from them. Maybe the next slide. We've got quite a broad audience today. Our audience, I think we've got people from over 45 countries. So if your country is missing, send us in a chat or text and let us know. Thank you for joining us. And it looks like we've got a great mix of, 30% of folks are early stage startups, 26% are major corporations, and we've got investors, government, education, and farmers, as well. Our next slide. We've launched 2 polls this morning, and hopefully you can be able to see those. And our first one will be around what you'd like to be able to see in future sessions. And our second poll will be around how people are dealing with the current pandemic and what we expect to see coming out of that. So maybe next slide. So I'm delighted to have Neal here with me. Neal is both a great friend. He's a leader of the industry and an innovator. Just a little background, Neal joined DowDuPont Pioneer in 2014. He assumed CTO in 2016 and the forming of Corteva AgriScience. He was previously CEO and president of Mendel Biotechnology, and he serves on the board of the CIMMYT, which is a global organization that uses science to make a difference and is working with tens of millions of small farmers around the world, focusing on improving productive maize and wheat cropping systems, around the world. Obviously, as many of you know, Corteva are one of the major corporations in the world who have a brilliant purpose to enrich the lives of those who produce and those who consume, and ensuring progress for generations to come and putting the farmer first. So I'm delighted to welcome Neal and hand it over to Neal to give you a little overview of what's going on at Corteva.
Well, good morning, John, and good morning to all the folks around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening who are joining on this fireside chat. It's a pretty unique fireside experience, I have to say, John. And like others, we've been adapting to this challenge and more virtual ways of connecting and communicating. So another example of doing that, I can't help thinking as my team does these sessions, it feels like we're the Brady Bunch where we're all on the screen looking at each other. So it's an old world, but it's a very much a new world at the same time. So, you know, I want to just, again, thank you for doing this and having me in this first conversation. You know, Corteva is just about a year as a standalone public company. It's been wonderful for our organization to be an ag-focused, ag-only focused business. And if you saw some of the earnings reports today, we're off to a good start this year, and I think off to a really great start as a company. So, you know, it's just great to be here, and you know, we'll talk a bit about the farmer. I mean, our purpose, as you said, John, you captured it well, is to enrich the lives of farmers and deliver consumer benefits. So, we'll talk a lot about farmers today as we get going. Would you like me to just kind of launch into the video that we have quickly? Okay.
Yeah, maybe before I know we're going to share a little video as well, you know, from Corteva, but one little personal question I just wanted to get from you. Obviously, we're all going through this experience, sitting in our homes, you know, having fireside chats and webinars, and would love to kind of get your positive experience from the current pandemic, both from a personal perspective and from a business perspective.
Yeah, so a couple of quick thoughts there. You know, as we've gone through this, we've connected. My global organization has been on a weekly call. I mean, really much more connected than ever before, and that's been a silver lining. Really being connected to my leadership team and the organization overall. I mean, personally, as you might imagine, I travel a little bit, and being at home in California is not the most common part of my experience. So a real silver lining is being off an airplane and at home in California with my wife, grandson, and 3 pets for almost 2 months at a time. That's a remarkable experience, I have to say, John. And it's a lovely morning out here in Orinda. You know, we've also, just the new ways of working. I think we've been a little bit lucky, maybe. We've been anticipating the need and the drive to more digital tools, virtual tools, collaboration tools that can connect us from India to Johnston, Iowa in real time. We had a jam session we did globally with our organization in January using some virtual tools. So we've been starting to live that life, but going more virtual and adapting. Virtual field tours we're doing now. In some cases, virtual farm visits. So I think we're seeing some of those accelerations of changes. And, you know, maybe the last thing to say is, you know, being agile at a big company, you know, I've been at small companies, which are just naturally agile, not so easy. But we've found, I think, new depths of agility that we're not even sure we had. We've started in 3 weeks, went from an idea to launching a testing program with Mercy One Hospital in Iowa. A remarkable turnaround time for a company like ours. So I think we're finding out things about ourselves that we didn't even know. And that's been part of the real pleasure behind all the tragedy and trauma that we've experienced at the same time.
Excellent.
So let me go ahead and just, you know, for Corteva, everything starts with the farmer. I know we're going to cover a lot of ground today, but every conversation starts and ends with the farmer and who the farmer is, right? The farmer of today will be very different from the farmer 10 years from now. And we spend a lot of time thinking about the future of farmer and what that future of farming will be for that future farmer. So this video captures that vision for us. So go ahead and click that and let's have a look. There we go.
There we go.
We all know who runs a farm. The one who calls the shots, decides what to grow, and how to grow it. But it's not just farmers. It's Sophia. That's right, Sophia, a new kind of consumer who's informed and empowered and knows exactly what she wants to eat and how she wants it grown. In addition to everything else that can make farming so unpredictable, weather, pests, volatile markets, and trade disruptions, farmers must now respond to changing consumer demands. The supply chain is flipping, and consumers like Sophia aren't at the end of it. They're at the beginning. We call it table-to-farm agriculture. It's the future of farming, and it's what we're working on right now. It starts with our seeds, bred to be as resilient and productive as the people who grow them. And new targeted breeding technologies like CRISPR that promise to help farmers adapt to demanding consumers and equally demanding conditions. With the right tools, farmers can do more than react to change. They can anticipate it. We're pioneering virtual farming to help farmers prototype new ways of growing before they even plant a seed. When we overlay different kinds of data, we're helping farmers make smarter, faster decisions across the farm. Environmental and historical data to know which seeds to plant where and when. Drone and satellite imagery to pinpoint where crop protection is needed. Weather data and artificial intelligence to generate higher yields with lower environmental impact. It's the dawn of a new agricultural revolution, driven by consumers and built on sustainability. At Corteva Agriscience, we're developing integrated whole farm solutions that are reinventing the world's oldest industry as one of the most modern. With table-to-farm agriculture, farmers, Sophia, and our planet all win. And we all keep growing.
Perfect. Super. Well, hopefully that gives folks a little sense of course, how we think. And I'm guessing with the kind of group you have on the phone here, John, that probably shouldn't be too far in a vision for most of us. You know, it's a world that's very data rich, very attuned to what farmers need and giving them the tools to react quickly to what they see in the market. So, and in the environment. If you just go to a couple of slides, maybe I wanted to share for a moment, just to talk again, a little bit about that issue, you know, the farmer. So for us, as I said, it's farmers first. Addressing the needs of farmers, they have to have the tools to address the evolving needs of consumers, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And it's a starting point for everything that we think about as we innovate. The next slide just gives a, you know, a very simple framing, right? I mean, the farmers got to think about two things. One is their environmental challenges they have. And here it's the usual things that we know a farmer worries about. We don't just sell corn, but you get a little sense of this, right? It's weather, it could be drought, it could be pathogens, pests. The challenges are not getting any easier, and they're getting more global. I mean, fall armyworm went from Brazil to Africa to Asia in a relatively short period of time. So the farmer has some major challenges in front of them. But the last of the slides I just wanted to share as a framing, thinking about the farmer, is the fact that the farmer also has to deliver the benefits for a consumer. So the next slide then captures that, right? While they're also dealing with the environment, they got to think about, how do I make sure that's a healthy food supply I'm delivering? Consumers, they want cleaner labels. They want simpler foods. They want to know that their farming is done in an environmentally sustainable and responsible manner. They want to see that less and less food is wasted. And, you know, this time of the COVID pandemic has revealed some of those challenges in our supply chain. And they want to know the food story. How did it get to their table? So these are the things on our mind, John, that we think about every day as we innovate and build our portfolio of projects and products for the future and in the R&D organization at Corteva.
Yeah, it's excellent. I think, you know, obviously, you know, we got two big shifts kind of going on. One on, you know, younger consumers, Gen Z, you know, millennials are changing the game or having very different needs than, say, certainly my generation or Gen X. And at the same time, we're dealing with, you know, increased environmental challenges. You know, what do you think are the major challenges, or what are the toughest things that farmers have to deal with today? And maybe for our audience, particularly with some of the startups, how could they translate that into, you know, innovation and opportunities, you know, going forward? Yeah,
it's a big topic. We could probably spend the whole time on that one, of course. You know, we've done a fair bit of consumer research over the past year, looking at the, you know, the consumer, the farmer at the same time, and looking for, you know, and it's with the millennial view, it's with the Gen Z, the future farmer, future consumer. What's the consumer thinking about, and what's the farmer thinking about, and how does that come together, right? Where's that places where it may be common? And so, you know, first of all, what we've learned is that in the main, consumers really don't appreciate the challenges and the barriers that farmers are facing. So that's number one. Number two is that they really don't know what goes into producing the food they consume. So if you're in a small company, you don't want to make any assumptions about what the consumer really thinks or knows about their supply chain beyond the supermarket. They don't necessarily know, consumers, why farmers do what they do. Why do they have crop protection tools? Why do they need crop protection tools? and what influences the choices farmers make. And ultimately, the consumers, our next generation consumers, they're thinking a lot more about decline of natural resources available and how that'll affect their food supply. On the flip side, consumers, looking at, at farmers, the farmers have a set of internal hardships, right? And they want consumers to understand the societal expectations on them and the challenges, the mental health challenges of being a farmer, being a family farmer. They also want consumers to appreciate the external hardships that farmers face, and that's about sustainability. It's about just fundamental financial viability. It's not easy to be a farmer. The fact that international trade is an issue for them, and the long-term success and viability of their farms. These are issues they want the consumer to understand. So where does that come together? I think overall, protecting the future of food is just a fundamental from both sides, right? Whether you're producing it or consuming it. I think everyone has an interest in securing the future of the farm as a viable business. And again, as a entrepreneur, thinking about that from the farm to the consumer is important. And then I think confronting climate change is clearly something on the mind of the future farmer and the future consumer. And industry is going to find it harder and harder not to be paying attention to that. We're paying a lot of attention to that. We've talked about climate positive agriculture. We've talked about moving past mitigating environmental damage to actually improving the environment. And I think within there, lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that BBC program that you've been involved in has been, I mean, I've really enjoyed, watching that and seeing the impact of what's happening in the world today. The world, is focused on impact, but also healthy supply chains, and health has always been important, but maybe in previous generations, it was more about taste, and tomorrow and today is about impact, it's about health. And how do you feel in terms of, you look at today's, challenges in terms of the current, food supply chain? It's under scrutiny at the moment. There are question marks being raised in terms of food safety. Prior to the pandemic, we were seeing major challenges, outbreaks of E. coli, etc., and it has a major impact to producers and consumers. What are the issues? What are we learning? And really love your insight in terms of what Corteva are looking at there.
Probably the most fundamental point for us as a new company is that our legacy companies were, really strongly focused on the farmer. And don't get me wrong, we haven't lost that focus, but we talk about the consumer today. We talk about healthy food supply, as you said. We're organizing ourselves a little differently internally to make sure that we have the tools to understand the consumer's needs and bring them into the innovation process. So, healthier oils, you mentioned, healthy foods. So healthier oils is something that clearly we focus on as an example. In other situations, I would say some of our technology that we've been developing can benefit other parts of the supply chain, other foods, right, that we don't work on. So in the vegetable arena, we're not working ourselves in the vegetable seed industry, but genome editing is a technology that could impact taste, flavor, quality, nutrition, right, in vegetables. I think that's an enormous opportunity that the future consumer is gonna want those benefits. And so we're partnering in a broad way with a range of companies to help make sure that the technology we've developed can be made accessible to support, the specialty produce and the vegetable supply chains that you're very familiar with, John, of course, and the work you do. So I think those are a few of the areas where I think we'd have an impact. And of course, just the transparency across the supply chain. We're really committed to that, being a transparent company, helping people understand what we do, how we develop the products we develop, and how we work with farmers to help them, produce the food that our consumers eat. So I think transparency is a key piece that has, again, moved up a notch, certainly a significant level in our focus as a new company, as Corteva. It's part of our fundamental culture.
Yeah. Excellent. And maybe as we kind of look to the future, looking to kind of understand how this is going to impact the future. And I don't know if one of our polls is ready yet that we could possibly share with people, or maybe Jess, if you want to be able to pull up the poll. I mean, maybe Neal, I don't know if you can see that or not. We're asking people about, what are the silver linings in the current COVID. And I think number one I see up there is 48% of people are saying reduce travel and increase virtual workforces. So we're experiencing that live right now.
We are.
Yeah. And a more resilient global supply chain I see is high, you know, on the list. And then looking at if you could accelerate your investment in an area in agriculture post-COVID, what would it be? And I guess we're seeing tools that make farmers more efficient. Is coming out, number one, and it looks like automation to mitigate labor shortages as coming in number two. So maybe if you want to maybe give us your thoughts on that, and maybe I know you have a few more slides in terms of you know, some of the future and the impact of COVID, you know, for you and for Corteva.
Yeah, let me do that. And it is interesting to see these polls. Sometimes they're a little surprising. Sometimes they kind of confirm some of the things we think. But I think maybe more than anything, what we've learned about in these last months is that disruptions that may seem like a low probability can really happen. And if you're not prepared for them in some fashion, you can really be hurt as a company. And if you are prepared and you're resilient, right, and your supply chains are resilient, you can really, you know, be well positioned to thrive, even, pardon that pun, John, even during this this time. So one of the things that we've really focused on and made a priority at our company is to do two things at the same time. And doing more than one thing can be challenging sometimes, but you know, we're good at a big company in delivering the products and services our customers need today. We have a pipeline of new germplasm and traits. We have a pipeline of crop protection actives and new formulations we deliver around the world. That's our core. That's the innovation supporting our core business. But at the same time, if we as a large company aren't also good at addressing disruption, at innovating with new technologies and new business models, then we're not going to be successful in the long term. So that idea of ambidextrous innovation, doing both things at the same time, they require different governance and different management and different styles of working, stages and gates for the core, and learning models, learning plans for the latter. They're just very different. So doing that at the same time is hard, but we're committed to doing it well. And one of the things we did was to step back a year and a half ago and look at what are the themes that, where there could be a lot of uncertainty about the future, right? Geopolitically, we thought, well, are we going to go to a more globalized world or a more fragmented world? And, we didn't have pandemics on this list 6 months ago, but we decided we should add it. Now it's real. And those themes and these types of issues are ones that you have to address and invest in to be prepared for change. Some of those we can drive change in ways that are desirable and try to lead. In other cases, being prepared for change, whether that's technology like precision agriculture or genome editing, or it's new business models, farming as a service, or it's the drive for sustainability we talked about earlier, right? All of these are part of what we invest in. So the last slide I just wanted to share is a snapshot of the way we've built our disruptive business innovation portfolio based on those themes I shared. And we do this by a set of pillars. These are our strategic innovation pillars in the areas of disruption. Some of them are technology focused, genome editing and digital, and some are more outcome focused, solutions, or environmental, integrated solutions for the farmer, or environmentally friendly solutions. And you can see a smattering of examples underneath there. And from an entrepreneur standpoint, thinking about what is it like to work with a large company, you might appreciate that we've structured this portfolio much the way a venture firm would structure its portfolio of small companies. Across these pillars, you have a set of initiatives. Each of them we treat like a small company. We don't fund them for 5 years. We fund them on a limited basis. Got to deliver on your milestones to get funded to the next step. And we see this as a real opportunity for new business innovation, not just technology, but true business innovation and growth for the business. So, one of my good friends quotes to me occasionally Bill Gates, who said, "We always overestimate the changes that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the changes that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction." We're trying to take that really seriously. We looked out 15 years, as you could see in the prior slide, to think about the future states of the world. And we've built some tools and systems to help us innovate in the right ways to address disruption, the future, but also what the farmer needs in the next 6 to 12 months. So.
Excellent. maybe taking the Bill Gates theme, maybe if we had listened to Bill back in 2015 when he talked about this big risk of a pandemic,
Right.
and I don't know how many people were tuned in, but we're all tuned in now. How's Corteva dealing with this? And I mean, I know that certainly my lifetime, yours, we've gone through a number of different challenges, whether it's the 08, 09, financial downturn here in Silicon Valley, the dot-com, boom bust in 2000, 2001, kind of, rocked, Silicon Valley. And now we've got something that, has basically put every person at home, in home, and every business on the forefront of trying to figure out what to do. I mean, how are you dealing with that?
Yep. No, that's a great question, John. And first of all, we all need to learn from experience, right? And I think one of the key issues here is to think back to the Great Recession and look for data. We're a data-driven company. What lessons can we take from what's happened in the past? And we've worked with colleagues at McKinsey, and they recently issued a report, I think late last year. I think it was called Stronger for Longer, How Top Performers Thrive Through Downturns. And I think because that's also very data-driven, analytics, it's something you can really rely on. And what are some of the lessons that came out of that we have taken to heart, right? That we have used in how we have built our response to the pandemic and as we emerge from the pandemic. First of all, and it's no big surprise perhaps, but it's to act quickly. You can't sit and think about this. You've got to move quickly. And one of the ways that's really critical is about managing cash. I think you go back to 08, 09, you probably remember, there were times when companies that didn't move quickly enough, when credit tightened up and cash availability tightened up, were really in a challenging place. So we've acted very quickly to manage cash tightly, to make sure we have a secure and strong balance sheet. Part of that, of course, third point maybe, is just preserving earnings, to work really hard to make sure you can preserve earnings as much as possible. The ability to do that varies across companies, of course, but we've really focused on that. Controlling, internally what we can spend. And of course, we're saving some money by not traveling, but there's other tools and levers we can pull. And so preserving earnings, managing cash, and then ultimately, you can look back at the history and recognize that there are companies that came out of 08, 09 stronger than they went into that period. And we're able to actually outstrip the growth of some of their competitors by being stronger at the end of that pandemic. So we're very focused on, the recovery process, right? We built a new plan for this year. We're very focused on coming out of this prepared to accelerate the strategy that we built. So of course, as a new company, we sort of refreshed and launched a strategy to align the whole organization. Having that means we can move quickly and we can look to where we can accelerate as market, assets change in value, as companies need different things, need different kind of partnerships. How can we be well positioned to accelerate our growth coming out of the pandemic? So it's a great document to look at, and we've used that to really structure how we've worked in this in the last several months. Yeah. And I feel really good about it. I think we've done. I feel really good about how we've done and navigated this process for the safety of our employees first, which was number one, first of all, but then also for the strength of the company.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I know this is going to be a tough question for you, but when you look out to the future and, what's happening, in Corteva, I mean, can you give us a little bit of a peek into the future in terms of what Corteva is looking at, new technologies, and maybe for you, what are you most excited about?
Well, again, this could be another topic for a whole session, but I mean, just, quickly, I would say, I mentioned we refreshed our Corteva strategy. Well, we did the same for R&D, right? We were a new company last year. We launched a new R&D strategy. And one of the key features of that was to align us as an organization on the top set of capabilities that we felt we needed to excel in to really win for the business, right? And this is something I think every small company entrepreneur should be thinking about, right? The strategic framework, how do we win? Obviously, what are the capabilities we need? So I'll just give a couple of examples, John, that you get at the question you're asking. First of all, we're committed to environmental friendly solutions. We've been a company that's delivered greener chemistry solutions for a long time. We've won 6 ACS EPA Green Chemistry Awards for the products we've delivered. And so we're very focused on the tools that will enable us to discover and develop natural products to the market in a way that's even more reliable than the past. And the confluence of genomics tools, deep learning, artificial intelligence to accelerate natural product discovery and process improvement, they're really an area we're focusing on. Another, I would say, of course, is over the last half a dozen years, the deployment of advanced phenotyping tools relying on remote sensing, proximal sensing. These are tools that have enabled us to reduce costs, but to improve the quality of the data we have, and therefore reduce the time frame to bring products to the market, high quality products to the market. And of course, as we've learned about those remote and proximal sensing tools, then applying them with the farmer in mind. There's 2 more examples I'll give. The next connects to this, which is the recent launch of something we call Visor. It's a new decision support tool for ranchers and and land managers. And it's using satellite imaging to look where are weeds on these very large pastures, which are today not even being treated for weeds, and therefore cattle or milk production feed and milk production is not what it should be. And so the combination of satellite imaging, data analytics, software tools, and then linked to services, so someone can go and directly and apply chemistry where the weeds are at the right time and not in the whole pasture. It's great for the environment. It's great for the farmers. And of course, the last one I'd be remiss without mentioning is genome editing. You mentioned it earlier. One of my really favorite technologies that I think could help us deliver a series of consumer benefits ourselves and with collaborators and accelerate the delivery of farmer benefits. So these are some of the themes that we're focusing on amongst that top set. And I think I like our chances of really improving what farmers do and what consumers get from us using those technologies.
Thank you, Neal. That was fantastic. I think we'll move over to some Q&A from the audience there. And I also want to make sure I saw a few questions, I think there were statements rather than questions, saying there's a few other countries that are tuned in today. So somebody from Congo, Mexico, and Colombia. So we hadn't mentioned that you were there. So delighted that you're able to join us. We're also, with the open Q&A, you can upvote. So you see the little thumbs up there if you want to if you like somebody's particular question, you want to get it up to the top. That's a way of how you can do that. And maybe you can see these questions.
Yep, I can. I can.
Okay. So do you want to maybe? I see Simon Doherty. It sounds like an Irish name. When I look at that. Do you want to take a look at this one? Clearly, we need to improve collaboration across disciplines, including agriculture, agri-food, agri-tech. But how can we stimulate disruptive, game-changing innovation and agriculture in the supply chain? It's a long question. One Health is a fantastic concept, but how do we get those conversations going?
Yeah, first of all, it's having some common view of the future, which I talked about earlier, right? And what are those disruptions that we think are most likely to emerge? What are the needs of the consumer, right? That are some of those disruptions, as well as what we can do from a technology standpoint. I think it does come as well to the dialogue across the supply chain, right? And I think we're very strongly focused on that, of talking to others or elsewhere in the supply chain that we're a part of. Sustainability is a major disruption, clearly. The demands of consumers. Look at Europe and the pushback on the use of chemistries. And so it's not just an input company, answer, it's a supply chain answer. And we know that, a lot of the companies we talk to in the food supply chain, they care deeply about how agriculture impacts the environment, diminishing that impact, improving, how we can actually be resilient in the context of climate change. And so I think partnership and common vision is going to be critical to addressing these disruptions. And, we're very engaged in open innovation models to help foster that, working with all kinds of small and larger companies.
Is that my dog or your dog?
That's probably my dog, I think. Yeah. She's feeling sustainable this morning, I think. So.
I see a question from Karen. How do you see end user or consumer acceptance to these technologies? Obviously, CRISPR is controversial in certain areas, in certain countries, and accepted in others. I mean, you're right at the center of this. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yep. This has been a drive for us for the last several years as a leader with the technology. And I've spent a lot of time in different countries, in Europe in particular. I mean, in some ways, Europe's a fulcrum here. The impact of Europe on trade, when decisions it might make, is huge. So we know there's, it's a network, but there are certain nodes that are critical, and Europe has an impact generally, but also on Africa. And so there's no simple answer. This is another one of those 45-minute dialogues we could easily have. But, we know that within a year from now, Europe's going to have a reevaluation at the parliament level of its policies today. I think there's a huge push for changing the outcome of the decision a couple of years ago by the High Court. I'm certainly hopeful that we'll see that. We're doing what we can to make the case that the products of genome editing are have exactly the same safety profile as a product of long-term breeding. And but this will continue to be a tough journey. And it's, even if you get the regulatory framework right, there's labeling issues that come into play, and they're big in the US. So this will not be a short journey. I think this is something I would hope in the next several years we see a real turn. But we're very much in the balance.
Okay.
That's what I would say, unfortunately.
Thanks, Neal. Just looking at the top one here from Diarmid McColgan. A lot of Irish people in here for some reason. We find that it's very difficult for farmers to embrace environmental and social sustainability with little economic sustainability consideration. How do you cater for farmers' economic sustainability?
Yeah, this is a big issue. I mean, farmers sometimes often feel like they are, sort of victims here, right? They care about the environment, they care about conservation of their land, and yet they sometimes feel like they're being blamed for the big agricultural problems that we see. And so, as I said, it's farmer first for us. So any change we want to make that doesn't actually account for what the farmer needs to do and farmer profitability over time will fail, right? There'll be no uptake of that kind of solution. So we work very closely, and I think this is a co-creation opportunity, working with farmers to understand what tools they can use that are both profitable and sustainable. And there are such tools, there are such approaches. Nitrogen management is a good example. We have tools to improve, to delay the degradation of nitrogen on soil. It leads to better outcomes for farmers, for example. So I think the key is to co-create with farmers. We're doing some of that. We actually launched a challenge about a half a year ago to learn about farmer practices that will contribute to climate positive agriculture overall, John. We're excited about seeing what farmers are doing and helping them, launch that more broadly to their partners around the world. Okay.
One last question. Do you want to pick one?
Let's see. Maybe the last one is worth a conversation. I mean, I'm looking at the one from Mark Johnson about anyone who loves my thoughts, maybe it's worth an answer, but how do venture-backed companies in the year of COVID-19, how will the landscape change? Will efforts like Granular, benefit from, the fact that Corteva is in this market today? John, you probably can answer this better than I can, and maybe this is where we end this conversation, but I've watched as companies who are in good shape have gone out and gotten additional financing, right? Debt financing. Those companies are going to emerge stronger. So like big companies, small companies, we're going to see a dynamic that's not uniform. And, I'm sure companies like yours are working hard to help, your portfolio companies. I imagine we'll see some decisions that need to be made by small companies, maybe companies partnering in ways they hadn't anticipated. I lived through the biofuel era where it looked really great, and then all of a sudden the BP issue happened and it changed dramatically, and you got to rethink how you approach things. So I think part of this is small companies really rethinking their own models and approaching larger companies in maybe some new ways. Yeah.
I mean, I think that, obviously, there's the age-old saying, don't waste a crisis. And you've seen in many of the, the big, turns in 2008 or going back to the 2000s, some of the biggest companies on the planet today came out of the ruins of some of this, and they've basically either kind of shifted their business model. They've become much more focused in terms of how they execute. And I think it'll be really interesting to see, you know, these companies coming through in the next 5 to 10 years, the ones that have been able to turn the corner, act quickly, adjust the business model. You know, and I think, you know, I mean, I know it's something for Corteva, you know, putting the customer first, and, you know, putting the farmer first if you're serving the farmer, and, you know, ultimately the farmer, and we're serving a consumer, and really being kind of focused on, you know, on that. And I really enjoyed, you know, this conversation. You know, I've always had farm to table. You've now reinvented that and put it to table to farm, but I think the consumer has really kind of put so many challenges, you know, in front of us. So Neal, you know, maybe just, you know, in closing, I know that we were originally supposed to get together back in March in Santa Clara at our Thrive Innovation Summit, and we had a beautiful award for you, your Lifetime Achievement Award. And, you know, in this virtual world, you know, we were trying to figure out how do we do this? You know, how do we kind of, you know, cram all this together? And I just wanted to say a few words of thanks to you. And we have a little video from your friends and family back in Corteva that we're going to play. But, you know, Neal, like I've really enjoyed working with you. I think we met back at the Forbes AgTech Summit in Salinas, backstage, you know, going on. You were coming on talking about the future technology, future of farming. And I've really, you know, enjoyed working with you and working with the team at Corteva. And, you know, in my introduction earlier, I mean, since, you know, joining Corteva in 2014, I mean, you've made a material impact to shaping the future of this company, but also the future of our industry. And, you know, you should be obviously so proud, you know, of that. And it's great to see how Corteva is continuing to go from strength to strength, great earnings, you know, today. And I think a lot of that is due to the product roadmap that you have in front of you, and your focus on, you know, on the customer. And also, you know, you've been an entrepreneur yourself. You've led a company and being CEO. So you've had that lofty, you know, challenge or lonely challenge of kind of being an entrepreneur. And I really commend you for that. And, you know, Neal, you're an innovator. You know, you've over 30 patents, you know, to your name and more. And, you know, I think you're going to make a major, deep and lasting legacy for our industry. And I want to sincerely thank you as maybe an outsider looking in, you know, into Corteva, but, you know, into you. And I've really enjoyed working with you. I've chatted with a lot of our friends in the industry, and, you know, we're sad to see you retiring, but we know you're going to be around, and we might even see you more. And I'm delighted that you're out on the West Coast here. So we're going to play a little video for you from your friends in Corteva.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Last really 3 years of building Corteva through the integration process, Neal was right there with me every step of the way.
It's funny, I've not really shared this, but if you think about Neal, now picture Neal, lose the beard, change the hair, just focus on the smile. I think Neal is related to Mona Lisa. Neal's got that enigmatic smile. It has a very serene, calming effect on you, and that, I think, is part of his personality. Nothing really ruffles Neal.
He always has a bit of a twinkle in his eye. He's clearly always thinking ahead to what is the next thing that we can do here. We've come this far.
You know, Neal has a lot of amazing traits. 3 that I think really stand out, given what he's accomplished in the past 5-6 years, and that's work ethic. Nobody will outwork that guy ever. His innovative capacity and the innovation model and the innovation culture that he brought to Corteva really stands out. And then finally, humility. You know, I've worked with brilliant people throughout my career, and Neal is one of them. But he treats everybody the same. It's impressive to me.
I think one of the things I've really appreciated about Neal is also his collaborative partnership. Early on in those days, you know, Neal would reach out from time to time and say, Jim, you know I'm focused on research and I'm helping to drive the innovation plan forward. But if there's anything else you need from me, or if you just want to talk about the business, and it seemed like he always reached out and asked me that question at the perfect time.
So agriculture around the world, I think, is a better place because of Neal's contributions, both as a scientist, as a people leader, as a visionary, as a developer of intellectual property in spaces that really matter to a large number of people.
I think Neal will have a very lasting effect on our company, but also the industry going forward. And at the core of that strategy is innovation for customers. And whether that's the innovation that we deliver every day or that disruptive innovation that can really take those next big steps, Neal will have a big effect on this industry for a lot of years to come.
Clearly, he was the right person in the right place at the right time to bring these three disparate research organizations back together into this innovation pipeline delivering machine that we are. And of course, upon Neal's departure, I will be taking full credit for all of this. I love that in conversation.
No, all kidding apart, I think Neal is truly a champion for agriculture. He's a champion for the customer. And what resonates most with me about Neal's phrases is that we are all doing this for the customer. And Neal keeping that in focus has been truly one of the things which I believe has got his legacy to where it is and helping Corteva as we continue our journey.
That's fantastic, Neal.
Fantastic.
I've got this award for you. I've been waiting for a month and to get out of our houses. And we're going to have a gem sent together for sure as well. So hopefully we'll get to do that, fairly soon when we're all released, to go out in the world. Thank you, Neal. I really appreciate your time, your insights today. Really fascinating stuff. And also want to thank everybody that joined us today from all over the world. Really appreciate your questions and your insights. Coming up next for us, as I mentioned, on June 4th, really excited to welcome Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. We engaged with the USDA last year originally, but we did a fireside chat and focused on the innovation imperative. This has been a key initiative, for the United States, for economy, for farmers, that the Secretary has outlined some kind of key goals in terms of what he wants to achieve and set the bar high to support farmers and the environment. So really excited about this. You're really going to enjoy it. And again, thank you, Neal. Thank you, everybody. And I also want to thank my team who've done a lot of work behind the scenes putting this together. Big shout out to Jessica and to Helen, who have been the major drivers, putting all this together. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay in touch.
Thanks, John. Cheers, everyone.